The gravity-resisted test for hip flexion begins with the patient seated, thighs supported, and legs hanging over the edge. The patient flexes their hip to end range, maintaining neutral rotation, and holds that position against the examiner's downward resistance.
Lift your leg off the table. Don't let me push it down. Relax.
Grade 2 hip flexion is evaluated in side lying, with the limb to be tested uppermost. The trunk is neutrally aligned and the lower limb may be flexed for stability. The patient flexes the supported hip. The knee is permitted to flex to reduce hamstring tension. The therapist supports the test limb and prevents the pelvis and trunk from rolling.
Bring your knee up toward your chest. And relax.
Grades 1 and 0 are assessed supine, with the test limb supported by the examiner under the calf. The patient attempts to flex the hip. The examiner's free hand palpates the muscle just distal to the inguinal ligament on the medial side of the sartorius. Palpation of the iliopsoas can be challenging. First, identify the location of the sartorius by placing the heel of the subject's test limb on the contralateral shin and palpating for the sartorius. Once the sartorius is located, move the palpating hand medially to locate the iliopsoas.
Try to bring your knee up to your nose and relax.
Assessment of sartorius function begins with the patient seated. They may use their arms for support as necessary. The patient flexes, abducts, and externally rotates the hip, while also flexing their knee. The therapist uses one hand at the knee to resist hip flexion and abduction, while the other hand, placed at the ankle, resists hip external rotation and knee flexion.
I'm going to show you the position to put your leg in. You're going to come up and out, and I'll ask you to hold it. So go ahead and move your leg up and out, and hold it. Don't let me move your leg or straighten your knee. And relax.
Gravity-minimized tests for the sartorius are performed supine, with the heel of the test limb placed on the contralateral shin. The therapist supports the limb as necessary to maintain alignment as the patient attempts to slide the test heel upward along the shin to the knee. The sartorius can be palpated on the medial side of the thigh, where the muscle crosses the femur, or near the origin of the muscle just below the ASIS.
Try to slide your heel up to your knee. And relax.
The gravity-resisted test for hip extension begins with the patient prone, unless the patient has a hip flexion contracture. The patient extends their hip through the entire available range of motion. The clinician stabilizes the pelvis with one hand and provides downward resistance just above the ankle with the other hand. Alternatively, resistance can be applied to the posterior thigh just above the knee. This is a less demanding test.
Lift your leg off the table as high as you can without bending your knee. Hold. And relax.
Assessment of Grade 2 hip extension is performed side-lying with the test limb uppermost. The examiner provides support for the limb, and the knee is maintained straight. The opposite hand is placed over the pelvis to maintain alignment of the pelvis and hip. The patient extends their hip through full range.
Bring your leg back toward me. Keep your knee straight. And relax.
The test to differentiate between grades 1 and 0 is performed prone. As the patient attempts to extend the hip or squeeze the buttocks together, the therapist palpates for the hamstrings at the ischial tuberosity. The gluteus maximus is palpated over the center of the buttocks. Contraction of this muscle will result in narrowing of the gluteal crease.
Try to lift your leg from the table. And relax.